transition and move into some ornamental topics and turf grass kind of weed issues. And let me get back up to the top of the page here. And I'm going to kick us off with, we probably won't have time to answer every single one of these questions live today, but we will get all of the answers put into the map. So if you don't hear your question answered, be sure to check there. But I'm going to start with one that actually came in last month and it didn't get featured live, so they submitted it again. They're talking about, they have a large redbud tree that has some splits in it. And last month, the question was a little more detailed and they were asking, would it be prudent to use some anchoring with screws and wires and things like that? It was a pretty large, mature redbud tree. And so I think sometimes that's going to be like under the, up to the discretion of homeowner, right? Like, are you willing to put that effort into trying to preserve that tree? We've got to weigh the pros and cons of like, how long is that going to help prolong the life of that tree? Like, so I don't know. I know Lee and Taylor, you all both have some deep backgrounds in arboriculture. Do we want to kind of expound on when you should kind of maybe consider those techniques and when not?
Happy to. So I pulled up the image actually, Celeste, and that is a horizontal crack. And when we see horizontal cracks in limbs, they are obviously more vulnerable to failure. Obviously, we have, the elements, insects, and wood decay fungi get in there as well. And I think Celeste did a real good job answering this. You certainly consider, through bolting here in two separate locations, but that wouldn't be the end of the job. You would still want to provide a loose cable higher up, 2/3 of the way up that canopy, so that still, if this were not to compartmentalize and still would become a vulnerability, you would have a loose cable in the upper canopy to catch that. Now, I agree with Celeste, you got to weigh the pros and cons, because to cable and through bolt is probably going to cost more than to remove this tree. And then once you put hardware in trees, you have basically set up a yearly inspection as well, because those cables are going to get taut. The bolts probably won't need adjusting, but certainly the cable will need at least biannual inspections, but generally it's an annual inspection to make sure, there's no compartmentalization of the cable in the tree itself. So I think this is very salvageable, though, Celeste. I really do. If it were my tree, I probably would. I'm torn on that. I probably would do the through bolting. And since it's such a small tree and I don't see major targets in that area, I might forgo the loose cable with the understanding that, hey, it's possible this could fail.
Yeah. I've seen some situations where we had splitting right down here, like beginning in the crotch. And then I've seen where they were doing some loose cabling up here in that upper canopy just to kind of take some of that weight, off of the bending there. And so I could see different situations where it would be more practical to use those techniques. Definitely. And if this was more severe, right, and we were like, well, even if we do something and this tree only lives, another couple years, would it be in our best interest to just go ahead and remove it if we thought it was an injury that was going to kill the entire tree, and go ahead and replant something else? And then you have that time to get something else growing, right? So definitely different options for different situations, but I'm glad to know that y'all would consider this particular limb salvageable. And then the way that this is structured, even if this does end up breaking, we could still get a pretty clean pruning cut right there. Don't y'all think? And then, I mean, you might have a little lopsided bit of a tree for a few years, but
it would fill in for sure. Yeah, I agree. And I like what Celeste said. Don't throw good money at a bad tree. Not saying this is a bad tree necessarily, but don't invest a ton of good money in a tree that's going to come down in a few years.
excellent. Okay, let's see. Where do we want to go next? So many questions. Oh, this is a good one. We planted a tulip tree seedling 2 years ago from the Tennessee Environmental Council when they do their tree day giveaways. The tree has grown well, over the winter, the tree began to lean. So they staked it up and it was growing straight again. And then this spring, with all that rain that we had, they removed the stake, which is good because we're always telling people you shouldn't leave things staked and supported for long term because we want those trees to build up their own ability to, sway in the wind. But when they took that staking off, some strong winds and storms came through, and now it has fallen over again. And now they've noticed there's a little bit of damage at the base of the tree, probably just from them, pulling and resituating it over and over. They're curious if this is going to be detrimental as the tree begins to grow, and what should they do to help it stay up, or should they just start over with another tree? And I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about, number one, compartmentalization, number two, some alternative ways of staking that focus more on root ball than other. Taylor, do you want to lead us on either one of those topics? And this is the picture. I know it's sideways. Sorry, it's hard to see.
Oh, do you have it up, the picture up?
Oh, I didn't share it. I pulled it up on my screen and I
was
never
like,
shared it with y'all. Oh my
what?
gosh. So yeah, it's a crooked picture, but the
Okay.
damage is pretty small. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a small
Yeah.
nick down here at the base, and there's a little bit of bark taken off there too.
Yeah, and so as far as compartmentalization goes, and we talk about coat it when we talk about trees and compartmentalization of that disease infected tissue that so what happens is a tree doesn't really like we do when we get a cut develop the new skin, the new vascular tissue, all that. What it does is it compartmentalizes that wound and blocks it from the rest of the tree. So when there's a good clean cut made on a branch, that's our goal is that compartmentalization so that it doesn't have an open wound where disease insects can get in. So, with a small damage like this, our hope is that it would compartmentalize that wound and block it off from the rest of the tree and keep that tree healthy and safe. Now, that may or may not occur just depending on the conditions. If it doesn't, that wound could get bigger. We could see issues long term down the road. And when it's on the main trunk of the tree, structural integrity can be a concern. So, this is something to definitely keep an eye on. My biggest concern with this is how deeply this tree is planted. And
That's what
that,
Katie just pointed out too. I said maybe she'll get to it if she doesn't. We can sneak it in.
yes, and we see this all the time. I mean, this is the number one issue I see with trees planted in landscapes in our area, especially, is too deeply planted, especially in this heavy clay soil. And so what you get is poor root development or no root establishment hardly, and you end up getting that moisture sitting on the trunk. It can cause that wound to be worse. And you get leaning a lot of times when trees are planted too deep. And that may be another cause for the leaning is this was just planted too deep. When we plant a tree, we want to find that topmost root. And we want to make sure that it is above the soil line. And when trees are small, like a seedling, like it was, it's hard sometimes to know which one's right. I always tell people when in doubt, plant a little high because it's a lot easier to mitigate, put mulch around the roots than it is to dig a tree back up and lift it in the soil. So, considering pulling that soil away from this trunk of this tree, seeing if it's you can find that topmost root, not letting moisture sit on that trunk, that's going to definitely help keep it healthier to help develop some of that compartmentalization of that wound. Oh, and then
Definitely.
you talked
Yeah.
about staking the root ball. And yes, I prefer a staking of the root ball to a staking of the trunk because I so often see people forget to remove it. And it leaves wounds and all that. And so there are some great techniques for staking with like um, pieces of wood to kind of keeping that root ball in place and removing it once it's established. It tends to be a great option, especially if you might be forgetful, like a lot of people, in removing that staking material when it needs to be removed. Oh, and Lee put
And
a link
y'all,
in there. Yeah.
oh, cool. Y'all know I'm a sucker for like terminology, right? So as I was looking into this the other day, I was like, there's a term for this, and I don't know why I can't think of it. Root immobilization techniques is what I came across in my horticulture research. So
Love
if you
it.
are looking for some staking techniques and you're like, I don't see this technique that they talked about anywhere when I type in tree staking, because they're most of them are talking about cabling and some different above ground strategies. So this is root immobilization. I like
Yes.
it.
And if you are going to stake the trunk and all that, just make sure you use flexible materials. You keep it somewhat loose so it can move. I went out on a site visit this past month and they were just strangling the tree with the staking materials and there were already wounds on it. And like Celeste said, we want it to move with the wind. We want it to build up that resistance. And so when you stake it too tight and it just sits there like this, it's not going to be a very strong, happy tree.
Yeah, it's just getting choked to death. Okay, we're still staying in this tree vein of tree questions. This question comes to us from Davidson County. Hi there. They're very friendly and greeting us with their message. Hey there. The tree behind my home has open cavities on the bark. I'm concerned about disease and structural integrity. Do you have any information as to what might be causing this? Thank you. Lee, would you want to lead us? And is this the one where you wanted me to pull up those images?
That'd be great. Yes,
Okay.
Celeste. Thank you. And this is a perfect segue about compartmentalization, what Taylor just kind of hit on. If you want to show the image first, that's fine, Celeste. Certainly.
Okay.
What this looks like to me, and I'm assuming even the other one as well. That one looks pretty gnarly, also, Celeste. But that second image,
Okay.
it clearly looks like this tree has been pruned on. I'm assuming this may be the house side of the tree. It's very possible, or branches were hanging into the canopy or out of the canopy into the backyard. So I'm wanting you to highlight kind of some of those pruning cuts there, Celeste, when you get
I'm
it.
gonna try to get there. I'm so sorry.
Okay, yeah, take your time. No, take your time. But there, I can see at least, I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12 or 15 pruning cuts. And remember, mature oak trees, really, we should be limiting our limb removals to really nothing more than dead limbs out of oak trees, especially mature oak trees. Yeah, that one. Perfect, Celeste. Thank you. And if you notice, I mean, they've limbed it up quite excessively high. And when we wind up limbing up trees or opening these large wounds, like you see this one in the dead center there, Celeste, that high up in the canopy, yeah, that one. The larger the pruning cut, the less likely the tree is to compartmentalize that wound. And that's why it's real important that we do structure pruning on trees early in life. Now, I know everybody doesn't get that chance, and sometimes you inherit a tree, but this is a tree that really was, in essence, neglected early on. And maybe it was a forest tree, but it does have codominant stems. So, that makes it a little higher risk tree with these twin trunks. And then we combine that to the stresses that happen, every day culturally and environmentally. And then we add on our pruning cuts and we wind up with internal wood decay. Again, the longer those wounds are open, the more likely they are to be hit. So there are some options for you. You can come out and do what's known as a tree risk assessment. You're going to want to hire an ISA certified arborist. Great images. Yes, perfect, Celeste. So this is what's called sonic tomography. And if you look on that computer there, it actually gives us a 3D image of what the internal portions of this tree look like. And we utilize nails and a sounding hammer. If you see these numbers around the edge, 8, 9, 10, each one of those represents a nail. And you have a specialized hammer and you tap nail 1, and it reads all the sound waves going to these other 11 nails. And it basically measures how long it takes to get that sound wave back. And you do that to each individual nail. And by the time you get to the end, you see areas of decay that are absent of solid wood versus those that have solid. Now, that's the most expensive high-end way to tell, but it's probably one of the best ways to find out if your tree truly has, internal decay. And this would be part of what we would call a tree risk assessment. I would encourage you to go to treesaregood.org, click on Find an Arborist, and enter your zip code. If they're not able to do sonic tomography, they certainly can do sounding. We can use a sounding hammer as well. Not super scientific, right? But we can definitely tell if a tree is hollow versus a tree that has solid. So definitely get this one assessed if there's high value targets in the area.
It's definitely fun to watch them walk around with the sounding hammer and banging on trees.
Yes.
Yeah, I've
Oh,
seen Dr. Merker do it, and every
yeah.
time that I watch him do it, I'm like, I can't tell the difference in the sound, but he's like, that one's hollow, that one's not, that one's hollow.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do you even know that? It's
Takes
experience,
years.
right?
It
Yeah,
takes
years of
years, but
experience.
once you get it, if you're with a homeowner and you tap, sometimes they're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that does sound hollow." So,
Oh, well, I can't even find where the stud is in a wall. So, like, if I can't tell the difference,
okay.
right, on the hollow and the solid, we better cancel
Well,
for that.
Unless
all right.
you're not thumping watermelons either.
Apparently, I'm just not good with that. Oh, those are excellent questions. And I love that. And the image that we were looking at, right? The kind of ultrasound image, that very center, would that be like where it was blue? Was that telling you that it was indeed hollow there, right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
The sound waves travel faster than they do through the wood.
Okay.
Yes, that's
That is so
correct.
cool.
And that gives
Thank
the
y'all
color
for
printout.
sharing that with
Yep.
us.
Now, the
Um,
challenge, I will back up and say one thing. The challenge with that is, remember, that is a cross-sectional scan of one tiny area of the tree. So there are situations where you have to move that scan up multiple times up through that trunk. So we can say, well, the decay pocket's only 3 feet tall. So use that
wow,
caveat as well. But yes, a great.
cool. Okay, I think we've got time for maybe two more ornamental, and then we're gonna uh, transition into turf. So let's look. We had a question come into us. This was from Sullivan County. Thank you, Sullivan County, for participating in our question answer today. They have a 5x5 rhododendron that was purchased in a North Carolina nursery, planted in a condominium residence on May 29th, 2025. So pretty recent, new transplant in the lawn area. HOA is maintaining this space. Shrub health issues were evident within a week or so of planting. They're having multiple dying branches, drooping leaves. The leaves are rolling in on themselves, turning crispy. Let's see, but they stay on the stem, so they're not falling off quite yet. I read another area. They submitted several photos of this question, and so they added information each time. Thank you. And one of them said that it had flower blooms. It tried to bloom, but then the blooms just turned brown, but before they ever had a chance to bloom. So lots of things going on with this plant. Planted in a marginal kind of like soil quality. It's close to the sidewalk, so you can imagine this is a pretty urban space where this large transplant has been put into the ground. Um, Taylor, you want to start us off just chatting about some potential ideas, and I'll get some pictures pulled up.
Sure, yeah. So, with rhododendrons, and with this in general, actually, with just any plant, planting the end of May, a larger shrub, is not generally the best time to put one in the ground. We're starting to get hot. We haven't been really dry yet, so that's a good thing. We didn't have that dry June like we did last year, but we start getting warm, and those roots just don't establish fast enough to kind of keep up with that plant and keep it healthy, happy. So, fall planting of shrubs is a much better time frame to put those in the ground so they can get well established before the heat comes on and they can be a little bit happier in that spot. Now, I was reading through that on the list and it also said it was right by concrete. It was
Mm-hmm.
in full sun all day, which rhododendrons tend to like part sun. Morning sun, afternoon shade is their preference. They're naturally found in wooded areas with dappled sunlight, filtered sun that comes through. So when you put a rhododendron at the end of May in the ground, it's already 5 feet tall. It's not a really super small one. And then it's in full sun all day. You're going to see signs of stress. And looking through a lot of these pictures, there are some with yellowing leaves, some margins that have gotten brown. A lot of this looks like potential just transplant stress, heat stress. Now, I know they said that they supplemental water. It gets plenty of water, which is great. Rhododendrons do tend to like that heavy moisture. But I also would worry with all the rain that we've had to look at drainage issues as well, because no plant, they're in the Ericaceae family, which is azaleas, rhododendrons, blueberries. They hate wet feet. They love moisture, but they don't want to sit in the wet. And so I would be checking those soil moisture levels as well, just to make sure that we're not overwater. We're not overcompensating for that newly planted plant, especially with how heavy of a rainfall we've had this spring and early summer. So, multiple things could be going on. We also may want to consider pH. It's right by concrete. Okay. Leaching
Mm.
of concrete will sometimes raise pH up. I see it in my raised beds that are made of concrete blocks. We've got an 8 pH, and I tried to grow blueberries. And I was so flabbergasted that I couldn't grow blueberry, and I wondered why. So I did a soil test. Oh, an 8 pH. Never going to be happy there. So, pH, I don't see a whole lot of interveinal chlorosis, which kind of would be a key indicator of that pH problem, but that could be another stress added on. So, I think it's more of a let's look at these site conditions thing. Let's check our drainage. They're not really happy in the full sun. It was just newly planted. Maybe check our pH as well and just kind of go through all that checklist of right plant, right place. And maybe this might not be the best spot for that rhododendron. Or maybe we just need to give it time to get well established.
Yeah, definitely. I think those are all logical approach to what's happening here for sure. And also, I'm gonna say it was a 5 by 5 foot plant. That was
Big.
a big plant to be like put into the put
Yeah.
into the ground. So, definitely, I would anticipate seeing some transplant shocks and
Yeah.
things happening there just from the size of the plant. So definitely,
We
excellent,
always
excellent
recommend
tip.
starting small if you can. I know we want big instant effect, but
Yes,
when you start small, it has time to catch up and it is a lot less stress on that plant establishing that root system when it's a smaller plant.
yeah, definitely. Okay, that wraps us up for our ornamental section.